November 11th is known as Pepero Day in Korea, and in honor of that, in celebration of that, I wanted to make some Pepero themed or vaguely shaped macarons. So I have all of my usual ingredients and tools here. I am using 2 different piping tips, and to color this I'm using a chocolate brown because I also want it to be super cute. And I just made up a little template using some rectangles, and my idea is to pipe 4 large circles so that it's long and skinny like Pepero or Pocky sticks, and then the very top circle will have some ears. I'm going to draw on a face, and then I will dip most of it, about 3/4 of it, into chocolate, much like a Pepero or Pocky stick. So for the macaron part, this is going to be just like usual. I am using a French method with room temperature egg whites that are whipping just until I see some foam and it's looking just a little bit white, and then adding in the sugar and cream of tartar until it is relatively stiff, adding in my food coloring and continuing to whip until I've achieved really stiff, glossy peaks. You will know that you have reached the right consistency when you can pick your whisk up out of the bowl and the meringue really doesn't move. You see that sharp point, it's really glossy and shiny looking, and you can wiggle your whisk around without the meringue flying all over the place. Next, it is time to mix all of the ingredients together. The meringue is made up of the egg whites, sugar, and cream of tartar if you're using that, and then any food coloring that you might be using. In my other bowl, I have a mixture of almond flour and powdered sugar, which, depending on the quality of your ingredients and where you are, and how big of a batch you're using, whatever, if you're selling them, you may want to pulse in a food processor and or sift those ingredients before you mix them into the meringue. Anyway, now it's time to get them all into the same mixture, the same batter, and I like to dump my dry ingredients into the meringue in about 3 additions. If you dump everything in all at once, I think it's easier to overmix accidentally because you sometimes get some pockets of ingredients. Otherwise, if you go too slowly and you just add a tiny bit at a time, again, you run the risk of over mixing because you've had to mix and move your spatula through the bowl and the meringue so many times just to incorporate every little addition. So for the sake of the texture and consistency of your batter, I recommend 2 to 4 additions. Once everything is incorporated, all of the dry ingredients are in the meringue and you no longer see them as separate ingredients, you have one batter, you now are at the stage where we will more properly complete our macaronage, or get the batter to the consistency that we need for piping. Depending on what you're piping, you might want a stiffer or thinner consistency, but at the end of the day, the ideal general macaron batter is going to be something that when you lift your spatula up out of the bowl, it falls down into the bowl in what we call a ribbon stage. It will look like lava. It will flow down in a beautiful stream. It won't break or be stiff or go too quickly. I like to mix my batter both while I'm incorporating my dry ingredients and then during the macaronage. I like to scrape my spatula around the sides of the bowl and pulling it through towards myself, towards the center, and then doing that all over again. I also like to use a large bowl like you see me using here, and I like to be able to turn it as I go and make sure that I can scrape down everything and see everything in my bowl. Once you have reached the consistency you want for your macaron batter, as you can see here, when I pull my spatula up, the batter flows back down into the bowl like a ribbon. You can put your macaron batter into the piping bags with whatever piping tips you want. I have one regular size and one smaller, and that of course is for the bear's ears. I'm just going to show you here how I piped these macarons, though they are basically the same as you normally would do, piping down with your piping tip at a 90-degree angle and making sure not to pull straight up with your piping tip because you don't want to create any weird little peaks or things. You want to have a relatively flat macaron even if you are tapping your trays later. I'm just going through and piping 4 slightly overlapping circles in using the rectangle as a template, and then after that I'm going to go through and pipe the ears on half of the macarons. I don't think it's necessary when you have something like an animal or a shaped macaron. If one side is going to be the face, I don't think it's worthwhile to put that effort and the time into creating something identical on the back side that isn't really going to be seen. So which is why I'm only going to pipe the ears on half of these macarons. After piping, I like to rest my macarons just on my counter and let them form what we call a skin, which is when you touch the surface of the macaron, it feels slightly dry at the very surface. You can touch it and pull your finger away without any of the batter coming with you. And then baking, I bake my macarons at about 300 degrees Fahrenheit for anywhere from 15 to 17 minutes. And then after they were baked and cooled and matched, I'm just going to draw on that tiny little bear face. And because I want these to be cute, but also the vibe I'm going for is to look like Pepero or Pocky, and I don't really want to detract from that aspect. I want the face to be quite simple. So I'm just drawing on little eyes, a little nose, and a little mouth. This that I'm using is a food coloring pen. It is so useful. If you don't have one of these, you can use a tiny food safe paintbrush and you can paint on some food coloring gel that you could or don't have to dilute with a little bit of extract or something. Alright, now that I have all of the faces drawn on, I'm going to go ahead and dip them into chocolate. And the reason I have a glass here is because these macarons are so tall and skinny, I want to make sure I get what the portion I want dipped, and I don't want to melt tons and tons of chocolate. So instead of using a bowl, I'm using a glass so I don't end up wasting my chocolate. So after that is melted, I'm just gonna pour it into my glass here and start dipping. I'm just going to go ahead and grab the macaron from the head and I'm dipping down about 3/4 of the way. I want it to come just up to kind of where you might imagine the bear's shoulders are, or just think of a Pepero or Pocky stick. There's always that piece of cookie or pretzel bread kind of part at the bottom that is not dipped in chocolate. So that is the exact same vibe I'm going for here. And then I'm just setting it back down onto my parchment paper so it can dry, solidify completely before I start filling the macarons. You can use whatever you want for the filling. I happen to have some leftover ingredients I wanted to use. I had some caramel sauce and also some crushed up bits of ice cream cones and chocolate from another recipe. I will link that down below if you want to see more about how I made that. So I just combined those into my standard buttercream recipe to create like a caramel cone kind of vibe for my filling, which of course then became a chocolate caramel cone with the dipped chocolate shell. If you wanted to get more of a Pepero or Pocky flavor, you absolutely could stuff a bunch of those into a food processor, grind them up and mix them into a buttercream to just go all the way for that flavor and vibe. Otherwise, I mean, the sky is the limit here. Matcha, Pepero, strawberry, Pepero, chocolate are all super common, familiar flavors, so those would be great ideas to play around with, I think. After piping in whatever filling you choose, of course, make sure to sandwich them and let them rest in the refrigerator or freezer overnight so you can have a complete maturing process and your macarons will achieve the best optimal texture. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you staying all the way till the end and coming along on this pastry journey with me. Until next time, have a lovely day.